Okay. Nan, thank you so much for joining my office hours. Can you just quickly introduce yourself and then the topic, and then we could begin the discussion?
Sure. My name is Nan. I'm the dad of Stanley. Stanley, who is a gun high graduate. He graduated from gun in 2023, just a little while ago, and he has an interesting college application story that somehow got the national media attention. In short, he applied for 18 colleges and was rejected by 16 of them, including all five UC schools that he applied to: UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara, UC San Diego, Berkeley, and UCLA. On the other hand, because of his programming skills and awards he won, he had a chance to interview with Google and got the full-time job offer from Google in September. So this really started a conversation among, I guess, a lot of interesting groups, parents and a host of other groups, trying to understand, trying to make sense out of this bizarre situation.
Yeah. Um, I think Stanley had kind of like the Palo Alto curse because unfortunately I think stories like his are not are not unique. Let's put it that way. Um
Definitely.
I'm in my seventh year of city council, right? So I got elected in 2016, started serving 2017. And throughout all these years, I have a lot of high school interns. And
Mhm.
so every year I write a lot of letters of recommendation. And and yes, I also see cases, maybe not quite as extreme as Stanley, but very similar cases. So um yeah, so um I don't know if you could dive into a little bit more about Stanley's background, and because I think it's actually quite exceptional, right? I mean, if I recall, I think he has like a 4.4 GPA or something like that.
Yeah, I can summarize his college
Yeah,
application. Yeah, so he let's start with the GPA. He had
yeah,
an unweighted GPA of 3.97 unweighted and a 4.42 weighted GPA.
yeah,
As somebody know how the APs are set up, that's kind of approaching the limit of what you can get out of the gun system.
yeah. It's basically almost perfect, right? There's maybe like one A minus.
Yeah, you can do a little bit better, but not by a whole lot,
Yeah,
not by like a wide margin.
yeah.
He also took a SAT and scored 1590 on the SAT,
And
uh,
1600 is the max, right?
out of
So
1600. Yeah, so
yeah,
yeah,
it's almost perfect.
1600, almost perfect on the
Yeah,
SAT. And in terms of school activity, he also is the founding officer and the president of a competitive programming club at Gun High School. So he's fairly active at school. And beyond school, he also was one of the founding members and second president of a nonprofit called Open Brackets, which offered free coding lessons to kids in underserved communities. And over the course of 2 years, he and his friends taught about 500 kids across California, Washington, and Texas. Yeah, some ways that's kind of the profile of his college application.
yeah.
Um,
I think he
I,
also started a
oh,
company, right? Like a sign electronics.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
And that was out of his frustration, seeing that all the
yeah,
incumbents not doing anything for the surge in e-signing when the pandemic was locking people down.
yeah,
The DocuSigns, all the companies, the stocks were flying high, and
yeah,
he was expecting them to do something, like provide a temporary
yeah,
relief or something to help out the folks during the pandemic. And he was very disappointed that did not happen. And he
yeah,
decided, hey, I can do this. This is something within my technical capability. So he made a free e-signing website and offered for the folks, like small businesses and even healthcare providers, which is another thing that he got a lot of thank you letter for.
yeah. And I think also he won some like very prestigious programming contests, right?
Yeah, I don't know how many hours he sunk into programming contests to the point
Yeah.
of being almost like being absurd.
Mm,
Uh, uh, and some of the program contests are, of course, for high schoolers. So he advanced to the platinum division of USACO, which is the coding competition for
mhm.
high schoolers in the United States. But beyond that, I think he scored something at the professional level. There is an annual coding contest organized by Google, Code Jam.
Mhm.
And at age 15, when he was actually a little bit too young to participate in that,
Yeah.
And despite competing against professional programmers around the world, he advanced to the semifinal.
Yeah. And I think at Google, he just didn't go in as an engineer. He went in as an L4. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, based on the coding and the job interview was something like this. Because of that startup we just mentioned, the signing website, and because that was built on Amazon Web Services, so Amazon offered a well-architected review for his service, and the folks who were doing this review was very impressed by how it actually set up the architecture and everything.
Yeah.
So in their assessment, in the report that finally issued, in the conclusion, they said this is one of the most secure and most efficient account they've ever reviewed, and they have reviewed hundreds of thousands, if not thousands, of accounts.
Yeah.
And because of that, they recommended this to be a showcase for AWS case study.
Yeah.
To set up this as an example how something like this should be done. And because of that AWS case study, somebody at Amazon, this was after the college application, around May, June timeframe this year, somebody at Amazon asked him, hey, have you considered just taking a job? We'll interview you for not the entry level, we'll interview you at the experience level.
Yeah.
And that reminded him 4 or 5 years ago, a Google recruiter reached out to him to set up essentially a full-time interview without knowing he was only 13 at that point. Now, of course, that did not go anywhere because the recruiter, as soon as they find out he was only 13, they said, okay, sorry, we cannot proceed because even if you pass the interview, we cannot sign any employment agreement with you. So he recalled there was that conversation. So he circled back to Google saying, hey, I'm almost 18 now. Should we have the conversation resume? And so not only Amazon was interviewing him, Google was interviewing him too. And between the two, eventually got interview and got an offer from Google and accepted.
So, I have some friends who graduated Stanford and they went into Google as an L3, right? So
you're a typical arrangement. So with a college degree, with a college degree, either master's degree or bachelor's degree, Google would hire them at L3. And they graduated with a PhD in computer science, Google may hire them at L4. Or the other alternative is that for somebody graduated with a bachelor's or master's degree, if they work for a few years with that professional experience, they can interview with Google at L4. Because Amazon was interviewing him as the equivalent to L4, Google was saying that we'll do the same thing, and then that's how he got the L4 interview and the job.
I saw your son on a few television interviews, right? And he was incredibly articulate. I mean, there's sometimes kids who are very technical. Like for me, I had a similar track to your son, but not quite as impressive as your son. But I was not nearly as articulate as he was. I saw him on national TV, and I'm like, wow, this guy's really a really good talker, right? And so this case was actually very surprising to me because it's one thing if you're just super strong technically, right? So I was super strong technically. I mean, I won programming contests when I was 7, right? So I won my first programming contest, and I won a bunch of them. So I felt like a decent programmer.
So you know the drill.
but I got into Caltech, right? So I got into Caltech, I got into MIT, I got into Berkeley, UCLA. But this is many years ago, right? And so I looked at your son. I thought, what the hell, right? Like, I mean,
That's why I think this case is getting so much attention because nobody seems to be able to make sense out of it.
Yeah. So, what do you think is going on here? Because it's, I mean, you can't do much better than your son did. I mean, in terms of his ability to articulate, he's really great communication skills. He really presented himself well on national television, which I tell you, a lot of people, including myself, I don't think I could do as well. Academically, he's pretty much at the top. From his extracurricular, I mean, it's pretty over the top as well. What do you think is going on here?
We're all at a loss, to be frank. And that's why we're hoping to get some transparency out of the college admission process, which right now is pretty much of a black box. So after the story went public, I received a lot of emails from other parents, in some ways complaining about similarly unfathomable college application results for their kids this year or maybe a couple of years ago. It feels like, of course, this is based on a very limited data sample size, but it feels like starting maybe around 2020, the college admission got much harder for areas like Palo Alto. I've heard places like where they used to be able to send 100 kids to UC Berkeley. Now, a few years ago, it went down to like around 50. It's cut by half.
Yeah.
There's something going on in the admission process right now.
Well,
we know
because they're not allowed to do affirmative action anymore. What a lot of colleges have started to do is they started to do it on zip code. So if you're a Palo Alto zip code, you have to have that many more points than everyone else because you're in Palo Alto, right? And so there's like you're ranked against everyone else in Palo Alto. And a lot of the kids in Palo Alto are like overachievers, right? But
Absolutely.
by the way, my niece was valedictorian in her high school. But she was in La Jolla High. So La Jolla is in San Diego, but it's kind of similar to Palo Alto. It's a very wealthy area. And so there's a lot of overachieving kids there. Yeah, she got rejected to Harvard and Yale and Columbia and NYU, but she did get into UCLA and Berkeley, right? But still, it was like, it makes you think like, okay, who gets into Harvard, right? who gets into these schools, right? And so, but I think one of the issues right now is like when you're coming from like these kind of zip codes, it's like you almost have to, I mean, because I have interns who are in Palo Alto and have some interns who are not in Palo Alto, and definitely if you're in a zip code like Palo Alto, I mean, I know some parents who are in these kind of zip codes, and they're talking about like maybe I should, move to East Palo Alto, maybe I should move to, Sunnyvale or one of my son's friends is down in LA, and lower GPA, lower SAT, lower everything, and gets into Berkeley, right? And my son, in Palo Alto with more doesn't, right? And so there's this kind of, I think, people think, well, not think, but I think colleges should be admitting people based on merit. It should be a meritocracy.
Yeah,
right?
That's our hope. But apparently there's some other factors at play. So our hope is to create a dialogue with the colleges, in this particular case, hopefully with the University of California, to have a conversation for them to hear about our concerns and for us to understand how they run their process, understand how they can maybe aim for something that's more balanced as opposed to something that seems to be producing extreme results.
Yeah.
And I also want to add that back to going to your point about this seems to be a zip code phenomena. I think, I don't know how many people are hearing this, but after hearing about other cases, I started to wonder what is actually tied with the mental health of the kids in our community. You know that mental health crisis that the kids in our community have faced almost every year. They're sad stories that we hear. And it's hard to draw a line directly from that to the bad things that were happening. But I think this kind of putting the kids on a mission impossible seems to create a toxic environment where the kids are taking unbearable amount of mental stress.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point. Because the kids think that, I get into Berkeley or I get into Harvard or whatever college it happens to be based on merit, right? But as someone who writes a lot of letter recommendation, I see where people get into. There's definitely more going on than merit. Okay, so and so I like your mission of trying to make college admissions transparent, right? Because at least we know, like, oh, it's legacy. Yeah, if you donate $100 million to Harvard, okay, you're going to get in, right?
Yeah, at least we're going to set the expectation for our kids.
Yeah,
so
at least it's clear. Like, yeah, like or like if you live in Palo Alto, you're going to have 200 more points on your SAT than everyone else, right? Or you're going to, maybe only kids with athletics, right? Or kids with, tremendous legacy get in, and it doesn't matter what you have, right? You're just not going to get in, right? And so maybe that's a better thing versus now, because now there's this kind of veil that it's based on merit, right? You get into these colleges, these elite colleges, based on it's ranked based on merit, but it's clearly not.
Apparently, it's
And
beyond
it's
that,
less, yeah, and it's less so. It's increasingly less so, right?
increasingly less so. Exactly, and I think this is a slippery slope not only for the kids but also for the parents, as we seem to assume the system is merit based, and seeing the kids in front of the kids that just graduated last year was not getting the kind of result they were expecting.
Yeah.
I think there's a natural tendency for the parents to put more pressure on the kids that are about to face the college admission game.
Yeah.
Calling it a game because it feels like there's quite a bit of a unknown factor in there, and this really puts so much stress on the kids, and I think it's very unhealthy for them.
Yeah. But if you think about the larger societal effect, right? I mean, you want your doctor to be really smart, right? You want the person building the rockets to be really smart, right? Just as a competitiveness of our country, right? You want an incentive system where if you work hard and you're smart, you do well, right? I mean, if you have a system where you work hard and you don't do well, or you are
Yeah,
smart
you
and
see
you
a
don't do
very
well,
weak correlation. Yeah, that bothers people.
then you know, because like I look at China, for instance, right? China in the 80s was people were starving. I remember people used to adopt babies from China, right? Because it was such a, you know, the economy was so terrible. And now China is the second wealthiest country in the world, right? And the big change was they went from kind of this communist system where, you know, equal outcome for everyone, no matter what happens, to now a market-based economy. And
to a large degree.
yeah, well, too large. It's not as good as here, but still much better than it was. And
yeah, much better, much more
yeah,
open, much
and
more
and so
merit-based, if you will, than say 30 years ago.
yeah, so it's like
20 years ago.
it's like the most effective anti-poverty program in the history of this world, right? Just by doing that. And so like you see China kind of go from this equal outcome no matter what input goes in to, you know, making it more merit-based, right? And then at the same time, we our country is kind of flipped, right? And it's going from at least on college admissions, it goes from you know, very merit-based to now this kind of fuzzy, you know, voodoo random, you know, admissions process, right? And so in terms of just the vitality of our country, in terms of you know, making sure that people have the incentive, you know, for myself, when I see cases like your sons or many others, unfortunately, I see a lot of other cases here. It's not just Stanley that got impacted. A lot of kids got impacted. It makes you wonder what the heck, right? I mean, what kind of society are we building when it's not based on your efforts and your skills, but it's based on something you can't control, on where you were born, your race, right? I mean, what kind of society are we building? We should be building a society that is purely based on your capabilities, on your merit, right? It should not be based off of something that's you as a kid cannot change, right? It just seems incredibly unfair.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, we do recognize, as I was talking to other parents, that there are factors that probably should be taken into consideration in the college admission process. For example, socioeconomic status. Somebody may not have as much of a wealth to draw on when they're facing their college application process. Yeah, I think it's fair for that to be taken into consideration. But I think right now we're not there. I think right now we're dealing with a black box, even though it's called a holistic review. But I think in some ways, in practice, the holistic review is effectively turned into a black box review, and I think that's what we're struggling with. If people are able to get some points based on the hardship they face, I think that's reasonable. That's fair because. In fact, if you get a college counselor, if you get somebody who can actually help you with SAT, yeah, maybe the kids in Palo Alto would score a little bit higher on SAT. But let's have the discussion. Right now, there's no way to have that discussion. It's a closed system with no visibility from the outside.
Well, I think the other issue is that I know some people in Palo Alto are incredibly wealthy, right, and have college counselors and have all of that, but I also know some people here in Palo Alto who came here.
I think that's why race-based or zip code-based is going to
But
too broad a brush.
yeah, but some people here in Palo Alto are barely here, right? They are here on the edge. They're here for the kids. They're renting. They are struggling to be here, and um and to put them in the same class as a kid of a billionaire is not right, right?
Totally agree.
Yeah, and so I think, and so kids like that, right? And you put them in the zip code, like, oh, okay, now you're in a Palo Alto zip code, so now you have to have a 4.4 GPA, or actually you can't even do you have to have a 4.5 GPA, which is partly impossible, or you have to have a 1600 SAT, or you have to, you know, it's like, what's going on here, right?
Yeah. And guess what?
So
I also received the emails from other parents who did score 1600 on the SAT, 4.4, 4.0 GPA. They still didn't get in.
yes.
Yeah. So there are factors.
That's like my niece, by the way. Like my niece was like this. I was like what the heck, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I describe it as a mission impossible we're putting our kids on, and that's just
yeah.
so toxic for their mental health.
So one thing that at least I know here in the city that people could do is they could do what's called a public records request. So from a lot of public entities, and I would think the UC is the same, right? You could do a public records request from the universities and ask them, what the heck, right? Because it's public dollars. So I don't know if the UCs would respond to that, but I know here in the city people respond to it.
Yeah. I think UC operates a little bit differently. If you are admitted student, yes, you can request the file of your college application. But if you reject it, they provide no such thing.
I mean, the question is why not, right? Why? I mean, this is public tax dollars paying for this thing. Why? I mean, I could get it from a private institution because it's private and it is what it is.
Yeah,
but
private may have more leeways, but even there, Harvard still takes in hundreds of millions of federal dollars. So even there,
so maybe
not
anyone,
completely
yeah,
immune from the public responsibility.
yeah. So maybe anyone that takes in public funding should have a mandate that they have the complete process outlined, and that anyone, whether you get accepted or rejected, kind of sees how it goes, right? Because that way, the veil of, oh, you get into Harvard if you're really smart and you work really hard, we could find out the truth, right? That no, it's if you are an athlete, you could get in, right? Or if you donate, tens of millions of dollars to Harvard, or you know, or for the matter, right? Like we saw with the affirmative action with the Supreme Court, or if you're Asian American, you're just not going to get in, right? Maybe that's also good to know, right? Because at least it's transparent, right? Because right now, like you say, it's this black box, this incredible unfairness, and like basically it's impossible for some class of people to get into college now, right? It's at least for the very elite colleges.
Yeah, exactly. And the black box nature naturally makes people suspicious. And to make the matter worse, a lot of people have heard about the varsity blue scandal from a few years ago, where the Fed actually busted the cheaters who actually bribed their way into the elite colleges. So I don't think the colleges can really stay with a straight face, say, hey, we're running a very clean process, because they're really caught red-handed by the Fed. And on top of that, also very thankful to all volunteers who actually find out there is an audit by the state auditor, California state auditor, who run a examination of UC's admission process. And they issued a very harsh criticism of the UC's admission process. And if you allow to me to quote
why don't you share your screen? Let's show the people what's going on.
Yeah. So if I may, if you give me the, I don't know, can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, all right. All right, so I'm sharing my screen here. Let me actually make this font bigger. So this is one of the letters we're writing to state lawmakers. And the point we're trying to make here is that in addition to the varsity blue scandal, there is an official audit by the state auditor that I have a link here, or I can share that with your viewers and the audience on the call or a bit later. Sure. And this was in their summary on the first page of their report. And I was so surprised when I saw this. And if you just look at the last line, basically they're saying making the applicant's chance of admission is more dependent on the person who viewed the file rather than the student's qualification. when I read that, I was like, what? All the kids put in years of work, and
Yeah.
their chance of getting admitted is actually dependent on who randomly gets assigned to view their file, as opposed to what actually they achieved. That is really an insult to the parents and the kids who are making so much efforts
Yeah.
into this process. And of course, another thing we cited is that the UCLA's distinguished sociologist, Professor Robert Mayer, many years ago, after reviewing UCLA's admission, also cited what he observed as different treatment between the different racial groups. So between those two, I think we have a reason to go to the state lawmakers, the governor, and the UC officials, say, hey, come on, you got to do better than this.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you could send me this letter, I'll link it to the video. And then also, Nan, if there's also petitions or other ways for people to get involved, send that to me as well. I'll link it to the video so that people who watch this can
Okay.
also get involved. Because I love how you're reaching out to our representatives, because I think they need to hear this, right? They need to understand, because like if you look at who's appointed to the UC regions, right? I think that needs another look, right? Because I think I don't know how this is serving the people of California with what they're doing.
Exactly. At least I think we should have a conversation. We should have a discussion. I put a different version of the roughly the same letter
Okay.
in the chat. And that is the letter we just sent to the UC Board of Regents 2 days ago.
Okay.
I signed up to make a public comment, a public statement on this at the next UC Board of Regents meeting on this coming Thursday.
So have any of the state representatives gotten back to you?
We haven't really started that outreach yet. So the only thing we have done so far is sending out the letter to the UC Board of Regents, and I hope to hear back from them after the meeting on this coming Thursday. And starting from this week, we're going to start our outreach campaigns to the state lawmakers. Because that audit I mentioned in 2020 was initiated by 4 assembly members in response to the Varsity Blue scandal. So they're saying, hey, how bad really is the situation? And that's another interesting finding, because before that audit by the state auditor, UC run its own internal audit and find two cases of improperly admitted students. And after the state auditor did their audit, they identified 64 cases. So they identified 30 acts more than the internal audit.
So are you seeing cases where people got, like, they bribed their way in, or 30 what was, or like people got rejected inadvertently, or what was the finding?
The finding, I can send the link in here in the chat as well. And this is an audit. Yeah, I put that in the chat message as well. So this is an audit by the state auditor, the official auditor of the state government, doing their audit work of UC admission. And the one I was mentioning earlier is that they actually identified a lot more students admitted based on as favors to donors and families and friends.
I didn't know UCs actually did that. So that's interesting. I thought only like private colleges did that. Interesting. And so how big of effect did the audit say there was in terms of individual evaluation? So it sounds like the individual had a bigger effect than the student's qualifications.
Yeah, so they will identify two problems. One is the student athletic program, where essentially people bribe their way in, even though they did not have the required athletic ability. So that's pretty much cheating. And then on the other one, the second half of the report was about the process, the admission process in general, where they concluded that the schools, UC Berkeley and UCLA, just didn't have any methodology in determining who's going to get in, who's not. So they identified thousands of students who are not admitted when they're actually more qualified than the students that are admitted. So they were very they used some very harsh words in their report. You can read that report.
Okay. Is there a change.org or is there a petition that people can sign that who agree with this, who wants
We're
to?
working on that, and so we're gonna have a letter outreach campaign with the state lawmakers. And after the APAC summit is over, we're gonna start a change.org petition to Governor Newsom. So that's where we plan to use change.org as the platform.
Okay. And is there a website or anything else that people could go to try to support this effort?
Right now, not really, but I think we have got very lucky with this with support from people when we have this. For example, the first link I sent, we did ask people to endorse the letter if they agree with what we're asking, and we have received over close to 5,000 endorsement so far already in less than a week.
Okay. Actually, can you send the link for that too? And I'll post it to the video.
Oh, okay. Is that automatically if I post it in the chat?
Yeah, if you post it in chat, I'll paste it to the video afterwards.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah. So the send two links. The first one is the letter to the UC Board of Regents, and that one people can has a link to for people to endorse.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, yeah. I mean, I could see this hopefully turning into some sort of legislation on transparency, which I think would be great, so that people kind of know what's going on, and then hopefully that could turn into perhaps more fairness or more merit-based admissions.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. And at the same time, we're hoping that the kids can breathe a little bit easier, knowing that we need to actually apply the pressure more on the system, on the admission system, rather than the kids themselves.
Yeah, and what about I think there was a congressional hearing on this, right? Wasn't there?
That's right. Yeah. So that was the end of September. On September 28th, there was a congressional hearing on the effect of different treatment by the colleges on higher education admission. And so Stanley's case was presented as an example.
So what was the outcome of that? Did anything happen?
So in connection with that, we filed a civil rights complaint to the Department of Education at the federal level. And things at level tends to go fairly slowly. So a month after we filed the complaint, we got back a response from the department asking for additional questions. We sent out replies. Now we're waiting for the next step.
Did you reach out to the group, and I forgot the group's name, that they were behind the ones who overturned the affirmative action? Did you reach out to them?
Students for fair admission?
Something like that, yeah.
Yes, I'm in touch with them. They shared some of the difficulties when they started, and also the price tag associated with the lawsuit.
Sure.
And that's one more reason. Actually, I'm hoping this time around we can take a more collaborative approach with all the stakeholders.
Well, maybe you should set up a GoFundMe too, right? Or something like that.
If we come to that, yeah, maybe we'll do that. But hopefully we can actually establish a conversation channel with the UC schools to have a meaningful dialogue. At this point, they're not responding to any of our messages.
So, so after the congressional hearing, was there any action that I mean, is there
nothing needed out of the congressional hearing? Yeah.
Okay. What about our current congressional representative? Did she say anything? Did she do anything?
You mean at the federal level?
Yeah, the current congressional rep for our area.
I have not reached out to our representative directly. I'm hoping to actually get more things going at the state level with UC first, because they are supposedly should answer to the state government and ultimately to the taxpayers and voters in the state.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I think, yeah, it's probably hard to do both. But I definitely think probably it's easier to get something going on a state level.
Yeah, and also uses cases a little bit more, even more extreme than the other ones, because the other ones they can say, okay, we, for example, University of Wisconsin, University of Washington, they may say, okay, we turned down Stanley because we need to cover our in-state students. And here for UC, all the UC schools, they should have the opposite argument, right? They should admit more in-state students.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
I mean,
why it makes sense to go to talk to the UCs first.
yeah, I mean, I also worry about just like, national competitiveness, right? In terms of, um, because you want smart people doing like to be a doctor, right? Or to be a lawyer. You want smart people doing this, right? And so I just worry about like like if our education system is not set up to not it's not merit based, I just worry about, what about the people graduating, right? I mean, are we?
You know who shares the same view? Elon Musk, because he
Oh,
also commented twice on Stanley's case on X.
what did he do?
He commented twice on Stanley's
Oh,
case
okay, well
on
that's great.
Twitter, now known as X.
Yeah. Okay.
And the first one, okay, of course, is a little bit off base, but a little bit of a oversimplified. But I think the second comment he made there is quite interesting because he was saying that what this means is that we can no longer trust the elite colleges to produce graduate that I can just directly hire. Now I have to test them myself. So essentially, he's in some ways complaining that the graduates coming out of the schools seems to be on a downward trend in terms of the quality of the candidate that he's interviewing and hiring.
Yeah. In some ways I wonder, because right now, like a lot of these elite colleges kind of have a lock on this, but like in the case like with your son or others, like I mean, the fact that your son got an L4 at Google is incredibly impressive, right? I mean, there are kids out at Stanford who do not become L4s, right? So I think in some ways, um, you know, maybe our education system is a little bit broken, right? Maybe
Yeah, we don't know. That's why we want to have a
well,
conversation. We want to have a discussion.
maybe this is the beginning of the end, right? In terms of, because if I think with technology and from like the truth is that just about every course you want to take is actually on YouTube already, right? I think Stanford, all these guys all broadcast their courses. So, I mean, maybe the whole higher education system needs to change, right? Because it's maybe dated and locked into the past.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know about nuclear physics, but at least for computer science, yeah, you can learn so much
yeah,
being from home with the internet connection. And
yeah.
that
So
actually that's exactly Stanley how he taught himself.
yeah, so I wonder if um by the colleges screwing around with the admission system, in some ways they're going to help accelerate this kind of bigger change, right? The bigger change of um and maybe education is less of a graduation type thing and more of a lifelong learning type of thing, right? And
Mhm.
more maybe one-on-one tutorials with AI and YouTube videos and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I just wonder if, because if you look at in this country, right, the three things that have not done well are education, housing, and healthcare, right?
Healthcare.
And all of them are extremely highly regulated, and so you
Mm.
don't have this really competitive, like you look at like the price of iPhones or your price of like it gets better and cheaper every year, right? And like but you don't get that in the other in those three areas, and those are the three areas that are
Yeah,
incredibly
tuition,
regulated.
healthcare costs, yeah, they all grow faster than inflation.
Yeah, they're all doing worse, right? So education, we spend more money per pupil, but the quality doesn't seem to be commensurate with it, right? And so they're all outpacing inflation, and so it just seems like something's broken, right? And admissions thing is the cherry on the top, which is just like it's really broken, right? Because I think what's happening is that um, like I think um what there's a push for is to have equality at the finish line, right? But really
Mhm.
what there should be um is what needs to happen is maybe if someone is socioeconomically, you know, disadvantaged, it needs to start when they're born. You know what I'm saying? It can't trying to
Yeah,
change
yeah. In
trying
some
to
ways,
change
I think it's yeah, like the college admission needs to be adjusted. It is in some way indicative of a failure of the K-12 system.
yeah, but really what should happen is that the finish line should remain the same for everyone. The bar should there should be there shouldn't be different bars for
Yeah,
different
ideally,
nations.
exactly.
It
And
should
we
be the
should push back
same.
on the system. Yeah, the
Yeah,
K-12
what should
should
happen?
improve for everyone.
Yeah, what should happen is we should fix it. If there's some school districts really suck or something like that, that should be what's fixed, right? Because I think the problem is fixing it at the end is too late. Because I mean, the other thing I don't know if you looked into this, but the other thing that goes on is sometimes kids who are admitted, who aren't quite maybe at the rank or skill level of kids who are admitted, more merit-based, they drop out, right? So that's a very common thing and so that's why actually a lot of kids, one strategy for a lot of kids now is they do transfers, right? Because the transfer is actually somewhat easier because sometimes people who are admitted, they can't make it. And so there's a relatively high attrition rate. And so I think maybe college admissions should be equal bar for everyone, but let's not have kids who are disadvantaged, right? Let's fix it for them. Let's fix it for them when they're born. And so when they go through the system, everyone can have a super high quality education, because I think that's what our country needs, right? I mean, I look at China, I look at all these other countries, they're all gunning for us, right? And if we don't have smart, hardworking people, we're gonna be in trouble, right? And so what we should be doing is we should try to make sure everyone's smart.
Yeah,
right?
We have to worry about America's competitiveness in the new economy.
Yeah, so I think that's what we should be doing. We should have, like, rather than it's like having a horse race, and then we're going to say, oh, this horse here, because it's socioeconomically disadvantaged, we're going to move the finish line 100 yards earlier, right? And it's like, no, I don't think I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. What we really should have is make sure that everyone, because it's too late by then. Because the problem is, if you admit people like that, they're going to fail. They're going to have big time trouble, right? So what we need to do is we need to fix it earlier. I mean, you got to fix it like during high school. You got to fix it during junior high. You got to fix it during elementary school. That's what we got to do.
Yes. Yeah, right? All the way back. Yeah. Because at the college admission level, it's already a zero-sum game. And some people are going to getting in at the expense of other people not getting in.
Well, the problem is it's too late. And also
it's already too late. Yeah. So what we should do is have the entire education improved for every student. So that's a non-zero-sum game where everybody can benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if society has more smarter people, we'll be more productive as a society, right?
Yeah, we're all better off. Yes.
Yeah.
You have better doctors, you have better engineers, you have better teachers. Everybody would be better off.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. Well, I love what you're doing. So as you progress in your journey, well, first of all, thank you for taking this on. I think that's great.
I got a lot of help from a lot of volunteers.
Well, also like is there a way for people to reach out to you if they want to get involved and help you?
Sure. Yeah, I can leave my email address here.
Okay, so once you send me the email address, I could post it as well. And yeah,
all right.
I think
I'll put the link about Stanley's case that got the whole thing started. Sure. To be honest, we didn't expect this to be such of a attention drawing story. We shared with the Palo Alto parent group on one Saturday night, and then within 24 hours, it's all around the country.
Well, it's because it's incredibly unfair, right? I mean,
so there seems to be struck in court. It's not, everybody seems to be identified with one part or another within the story.
Yeah.
And I'll put the Stanley's college application story summary in here, and at the end, it has my email if folks wants to reach out to me.
Okay.
I'll be totally happy to hear from them.
Yeah, because otherwise what people are going to start doing, or what people already are starting thinking about, is they just move to a better zip code, right? I mean, I think a lot of people move to Palo Alto because they think they're giving their kids a good chance, but it's like, it really hurts their college.
Yeah, actually, it looks like in terms of college applications, the opposite.
Yeah, totally. Okay, now
I'll put Stanley's college application story in the chat, and my email in there as well. So
okay, awesome. I'll post all of that to the video.
Yeah. We also have a Discord group.
Discord. Oh, okay. Why don't you put the link for that too?
Okay. Let me put the Discord group in there as well. Initially, we were using WeChat, but that one has a group size of a limit of 500, and we quickly exceed that. So we switched over to Discord. Let me find the invite link for that Discord group channel.
Yeah, and what we'll do with this video that we're doing right now, this live stream, is we're going to turn it into YouTube videos and TikTok, so you're going to get more play too. So hopefully that'll drive some, you already got great attention, but this will help maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, the more people can join this discussion, I think the better off we're going to be. Yeah, I'll put the Discord invite link in chat as well.
Perfect. Okay, I'll post this as well. Okay.
So overall, we're organizing into 9 committees, all staffed by volunteers to go at different angles. So there's a college outreach committee, and there's a government outreach committee, there is a fundraising committee. Yeah, so you name it. We're trying to make it long lasting because we don't expect this to be something that can be quickly resolved.
Sure, that's awesome. Great. Okay, then, is there anything else that you want to mention before we sign off here?
Yeah, for anybody who's interested, I think what we're hoping for really is just to have that discussion. I think that's what's missing here. We're not saying we should reduce college application to standardized tests. That's not what we're going after. Actually, I'm for holistic review. I think our students' practical ability, their actual problem-solving skills, and their social responsibility should weigh very heavily in the college application process. But that should not be construed as a black box review, which is what we're facing right now.
Okay, well said. Okay, Nan. Well, thank you for all your work, and yeah, I hope we can change this.
Okay, all right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, have a good night.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.